The most important rule in protection is never let the principal out of your sight. But no one trains you for the moment the principal's son runs past his father, past the guns, and into your arms. In the smoke of an ambush, a 6-year-old boy made a choice that shattered every protocol. He didn't run to the arms dealer who raised him. He ran to the woman hired to guard him. This is the story of Elijah Park and the woman sworn to protect him, Anya Adebio. For 8 months, she was just the quiet shadow behind a powerful soul arms dealer and his son. But in 1 second, her role was rewritten. Because when the bullets flew, the child she was paid to guard chose her as his sanctuary. This forces a single, devastating question. What did the boy see in his protector that he could no longer find in his own father? To understand that choice, you have to go back 8 months, to when Anya Adebio first arrived in Seoul. She was 29, a former clothes protection officer for a private military company, hired through an encrypted channel for one purpose: to be the invisible shield for Min-jun Park's only heir. Min-jun Park. In the opaque world of international defense contracting, he was a ghost with a balance sheet. He didn't manufacture the weapons. He was the concierge for the world's most delicate transactions. His penthouse overlooking the Han River was a fortress of quiet money and quieter threats, and his 6-year-old son, Elijah, was his sole vulnerability. The interview lasted 7 minutes. Min-jun sat behind a desk of polished obsidian. He didn't look at Anya's resume, he looked at her eyes. Your file says you left Tier 1 protection after an incident in Lagos. You intervened against a client's orders. Why would I hire someone who disobeys? Anya didn't blink. The client ordered me to abandon a vehicle with a non-combatant inside during an active extraction. The order was morally and tactically unsound. I got the principal and the non-combatant out, and you were fired. I resigned. The principal is the child, everything else is detail. Min-jun was silent for a full minute. The job pays 3 times the market rate. You will live here. You will have no life outside these walls. Your loyalty is to my son, not to me. Understood, understood. Anya moved into the staff wing that night. Her room was a capsule, a bed, a locker, a window with a view of the service alley. Her world shrunk to the perimeter of a 6-year-old boy. Elijah was a quiet child with his father's dark hair and a watchfulness that felt decades too old. He attended the British International School, flanked by 2 other agents. Anya was the constant, the one who woke him, packed his lunch, drove him to school, and sat in the back of the classroom during parent events where Min-jun was always a blurred face on a tablet screen. The first fracture appeared in week 3. It was raining. The motorcade was returning from school. Elijah, staring out the window, spoke without turning. My dad says you're the best. Is that true? It's my job to be the best for you. But are you the best at fighting? Anya considered the question. I'm the best at seeing the fight before it starts. That's boring. He finally looked at her. I want to learn how to hit. Why? So I can be like my dad. The words hung in the soundproof cabin. Anya saw the boy's small fist clenched on his knee. She made a decision that would break every protocol in her manual. Hitting is the last thing you do. First, you learn how to listen, how to see. I'll teach you that instead. And so the lessons began, not in a gym but in the penthouse. The game was called Snapshot. Elijah would have 5 seconds to enter a room and report 3 things that were out of place. A book tilted differently on a shelf. A pen moved on a desk. The slight shift in the angle of a security camera. He was astonishingly good. His father's world had trained him in paranoia. Anya refined it into observation. Their bond was built in those silent minutes of focused attention, a language that had nothing to do with words. Meanwhile, Min-jun was ascending. A deal with a sanctioned Eastern European paramilitary group doubled his quarterly revenue. His meetings grew longer, his presence in the penthouse growing thinner than the smoke from his rare cigars. He missed Elijah's school play. He was absent for the boy's 7th birthday, a package from Geneva arriving in his stead, a limited edition watch worth more than Anya's annual salary. Elijah put it in a drawer, untouched. The boy began to wait at the penthouse door each evening at 6:15. his ear pressed to the wood, listening for his father's elevator. More nights than not, the only sound was the hollow sigh of the elevator passing by to the penthouse above. Anya would find him there, asleep on the marble floor, and carry him to bed. She never mentioned it to Min-jun. It wasn't in her contract. True turning point came 4 months in on a Tuesday. Min-jun was away in Dubai. Elijah developed a fever of 103. The house doctor came and went. At 2 in the morning, the boy's breathing grew shallow and rapid. Anya's every protocol demanded she call the principal, Min-jun. She looked at the boy, burning up, whispering for his dad. She made a choice. She bundled him in a blanket, bypassed the sleeping house staff, and drove him to the Severance Hospital emergency room herself. It was pneumonia. He was admitted for 3 days. Min-jun's private jet landed on the 2nd day. He stormed into the private hospital suite, his face thunderous. "You moved my son without my authorization. You exposed him. You broke protocol." Anya, standing by the window, didn't move. "The protocol would have let him drown in his own lungs while we waited for your call back. He's stable now. He's asking for you." Min-jun stared at her, the anger deflating into something more complex, shame. He walked to the bed where Elijah slept. He placed his hand on his son's head, a gesture awkward and unfamiliar. When he turned back, his voice was low. "You risked your job." "He's my job," Anya said. "The only part that matters." Something broke that day, and something else was forged. Min-jun's trust in Anya became absolute, but it was the trust of a delegator. He handed over more of his son's world to her, retreating further into his own. Elijah, in turn, stopped waiting at the door. The watchful hope in his eyes when his father was home slowly dimmed, replaced by a calm certainty when Anya entered the room. Then came the package. It arrived 6 weeks before the ambush, addressed to Min-jun. It was intercepted by security, a standard procedure, but this one was different. It contained no explosive, no chemical. It contained a single, freshly pressed school uniform, identical to Elijah, sized for a 7-year-old. Pinned to it was a note in neat Hangul. "A growing boy needs new clothes. We will deliver them personally." It was a declaration of war, not against Min-jun, but against his heir. The security detail was tripled. Routes were randomized daily. The penthouse became a true bunker. Min-jun's paranoia, once a professional tool, became a domestic atmosphere. He drilled Elijah on escape routes, his instructions sharp, frightening. The boy would finish the drills and then seek out Anya in the kitchen, where she would calmly make hot chocolate, her presence a silent counterpoint to his father's fear. The night before the ambush, Min-jun called Anya into his study. The deal with the Eastern European group had gone sour. They felt cheated. They wanted reparations, or they would take collateral. "You know what the collateral is," he said, not looking at her. "Elijah does not leave the building tomorrow, under any circumstances." Anya heard the unspoken terror in his command. She also heard its fatal flaw. It treated the boy as an object to be locked away, not a child to be prepared. She nodded. But in her room, she prepared a different way. She sat with Elijah before bed. "Remember our game?" she asked. "The snapshot game. Tomorrow, if I say snapshot, you do not look at me. You do not look at your father. You run to the green car, the one with the dent on the door. You get in the back, you lie down on the floor, and you do not move until I come. Do you understand?" His large, serious eyes held hers. "I understand. Who will you run to?" He didn't hesitate. "You." The next afternoon, the motorcade left for a mandatory, heavily secured meeting at the Ministry of Trade. Min-jun had relented, believing the daytime route with full tactical escort was impenetrable. He was wrong. As the 3-car convoy entered the narrow, tree-lined street near the ministry back entrance, the world erupted. A delivery van swerved, blocking the lead car. Gunfire cracked, not the pop of handguns, but the controlled burst of automatic weapons. The principal's car, the middle vehicle, was boxed in. Min-jun's bodyguard was hit in the first volley. Min-jun himself was screaming, not in fear but in fury, reaching for a weapon in the console. And Elijah in the seat beside him unfroze. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. His eyes locked not on his father but on Anya, who had already burst from the front passenger seat, her door serving as a shield. She met his gaze and shouted one word into the chaos. "Snapshot." And the boy moved. He unclipped his seatbelt, ducked below the line of fire, pushed past his father's outstretched, grasping hand and ran. He ran past the guns, past the shattered glass, across 3 meters of open, deadly pavement, and threw himself into Anya's waiting arms. She absorbed his impact, pivoted, and placed her body between him and the shooters. In that moment, the professional shield became a human one. The ambush was professional, but it had not accounted for this. The child's complete, instinctual rejection of his own blood for the protector he had chosen. The shooters, their primary visual target, the boy with his father, suddenly gone, hesitated for one critical second. And in that second, Anya Adebio, with Elijah clinging to her vest, made her own choice. She didn't retreat. She advanced. She advanced toward the nearest shooter, a man emerging from the van's side door. Her calculation was glacial. He was expecting a retreat, a scramble for cover. Her forward movement broke his script. In the 2 seconds it took him to adjust his aim, she was inside his guard. Elijah was a compact weight against her chest, his face buried in her neck. Anya's right hand shot out not for the weapon but for the arm holding it. She used the man's own momentum, pulling him forward while driving her knee up. The crack was audible, a dislocated shoulder. The rifle clattered to the asphalt. A second shooter swung his barrel toward her. She dropped, rolling with the child shielded beneath her, the bullets chewing the pavement where she'd stood. She came up behind the open door of the principal's sedan, now pockmarked with bullets. Min Jun was inside, returning fire through the shattered window, his face a mask of primal rage. The tactical team from the lead car, having neutralized their own attackers, now provided covering fire. The element of surprise was gone. The remaining shooters, realizing the extraction had failed, began a fighting retreat to the van. Anya's priority shifted instantly. The green car with the dent was 20 meters away, its driver slumped over the wheel. It was no longer an option. "Holding point Beta," she whispered into her concealed mic, the code for the secondary safe location. A response crackled in her earpiece. "Acknowledged, proceed, street is hot." She looked at Min Jun. "We have to move, now." He hesitated for a fatal second, torn between vengeance and survival. Then he saw his son in Anya's arms, alive, unharmed. He kicked his door open and scrambled out, joining her behind the relative cover of the engine block. Together, the 3 of them, the dealer, the bodyguard, and the child, ran a zigzag path toward a nondescript service entrance 20 yards down the alley, bullets pinging off dumpsters and brick around them. They breached the door just as the van screeched away, leaving behind 2 bodies, a scene of carnage, and a silent, devastating question hanging in the smoke. The safe room was a windowless panic room built into the sub-basement of a neighboring corporate building, part of a network Min Jun had paid for but never used. For the first hour, there was only the sound of ragged breathing and Elijah's quiet, shock-induced shivers. Min Jun paced the 10-foot space like a caged tiger. He barked into a satellite phone, demanding answers, orchestrating a blackout. Anya sat on the floor with Elijah, checking him for any injury, murmuring steady, meaningless reassurances. The boy wouldn't let go of her tactical vest. When Min Jun finally exhausted his contacts, he turned on her. His anger had a new target. "You told him to run to you. It wasn't a question." "Yes," Anya said, her voice flat. "You undermined me in front of them. You made me look weak." "I made sure he survived," she fired back, the professional calm fracturing for the first time. "Your plan was to hide him in a metal box. Their plan was to storm that box. He would have been a trophy. I gave him a chance." "He is my son," Min Jun roared, the sound echoing in the confined space. Elijah flinched. Anya felt the boy tense. She stood slowly, placing herself subtly between father and son. "He is," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "And for the last 8 months, he's been waiting for you to act like it. Today, he stopped waiting." The words landed like a physical blow. Min Jun stared at her, then at his son, who was now looking at the floor. The raw truth of the ambush wasn't the gunfire, it was the boy's choice. It was a verdict. The fury drained from Min Jun's face, replaced by a hollow, stunned realization. He sank onto a steel bench, the fight gone out of him. 3 hours later, secured by a new team of trusted agents, They were extracted to an off-the-book safe house in the countryside. The official story, already being seeded by Min Jun's media liaisons, was a botched attempted robbery on a corporate executive. The police investigation would be guided, limited, and ultimately buried. But within the inner circles of power and crime, the real message was received. The park heir was vulnerable. The park operation was compromised. For Anya, the job was now irrevocably different. The contract was about risk mitigation. But you cannot mitigate a bond. Elijah, traumatized but acutely observant, now followed her like a shadow. He slept only if she was in the adjoining room. He ate only if she tasted the food first. Min Jun, reeling from the dual humiliation of the attack and his son's rejection, became a ghost in his own safe house, buried in forensic reports and intelligence briefings. The first major revelation came 72 hours later. The shooters were not the disgruntled Eastern Europeans. They were a freelance tactical unit, a mixed group of ex-special forces from Southeast Asia, hired through a cutout. The payment trail was a maze of crypto and shell companies, but Min Jun's forensic accountants were the best in the world. They followed the digital scent to a holding company registered in Macau. And that company had made a single large payment, 1 month prior, to a private psychiatric clinic in Zurich. Min Jun summoned Anya to the secure study in the safe house. His face was ashen. He played a security audio file. It was a phone call dated 2 months before the ambush. His own voice weary, "The deal is final. The shipment goes to Moldova. There is no more discussion." A woman's voice, cultured, cold, replied, "You are choosing strangers over family after everything I sacrificed. You leave me no choice, brother." The line went dead. "Who is that?" Anya asked. Min Jun didn't look at her. "My sister, Su Min." He brought a photo up on a monitor. A woman in her late 40s, elegant, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. She runs the family's legitimate arm, hotels, shipping, or she did. He explained in short clinical sentences. The Park Empire was not a solo operation. It was a dynasty built by their father. Upon the father's death, the legacy was split. The shadow world to Min Jun, the sunlit world to Su Min. But the legitimate businesses had struggled. Debts mounted. Su Min had demanded he funnel more lucrative, high-risk contracts through her shipping lanes, using her hotels as meeting points. He had refused, calling it an amateur's gamble that would draw fatal attention. Their relationship, always competitive, had curdled into hatred. "The clinic in Zurich," Min Jun said, his voice hollow. "Our mother is there. Advanced dementia. Su Min controls the trust that pays for it. She threatened to have her moved to a lesser facility if I didn't comply." Anya understood immediately. The ambush was never about killing Elijah. It was a message, a demonstration of reach, a proof that Min Jun could not protect what he loved most. It was a corporate takeover bid executed with bullets. "She wanted you to know it was her," Anya stated. "Yes, the school uniform, the note, it was her signature. She always had a taste for the dramatic." But here, where the story twists, as Min Jun's hackers dug deeper into Su Min's finances, they found another layer. Large, regular outgoing payments from her accounts to a separate entity, one not registered in Macau or Zurich, but in Pyongyang. A front for the Joseon Group, a hermetic, ultra-violent syndicate with ties to the North Korean regime's clandestine economic operations. Su Min wasn't just a disgruntled sister. She was a desperate debtor. She had borrowed from the most ruthless loan sharks on earth to prop up her failing hotels, and now she was drowning. The Joseon Group didn't want interest. They wanted a piece of the Park Empire, Min Jun's empire. The ambush was her down payment. She had offered them a demonstration, the breach of his security, the near capture of his heir. Their next move would be a partnership offer, with Su Min as the compliant figurehead and Min Jun either sidelined or buried. The stakes had just exploded from a family feud to an international geopolitical incident. Min Jun was no longer just fighting his sister. He was facing a state-sponsored criminal enterprise that operated with absolute impunity, and they had just proven they could touch his son. Anya's role underwent another seismic shift. She was no longer just a bodyguard against random threats. She was the last line of defense in a shadow war. Minjun, stripped of his arrogance, came to her that night. "I have to go to the source. I have to confront Su-min, cut the head off this before the Joseon group moves in." "It's a trap," Anya said. "Of course it is," he replied. "But it's the only move left. I will go. You will not. You will take Elijah and disappear. A new identity. A new country. You will keep him safe if I fail." He was handing her his legacy, his redemption, his son. But Anya saw the flaw. If you walk into her trap, they will use Elijah to draw you out anyway. They know he's your only pressure point. Hiding him only works if the threat is gone. A grim understanding passed between them. The only way out was through. Su-min had to be neutralized and the Joseon group's interest had to be annihilated. And to do that, Min-jun needed leverage beyond money or weapons. He needed the one thing he had spent a lifetime avoiding: a witness. A person of undeniable integrity with direct knowledge of his sister's crimes and the attack on a child. He needed Anya, not just as a protector but as a sword. And he needed to give her something worth fighting for beyond a paycheck. He accessed a secure server, pulling a file he had never intended to share. It was a police report dated 7 years earlier from the city of Gwangju, a hit and run. The victim, a woman named Choi Hae-jin. The case was closed, ruled an accident. Elijah's mother, Min-jun said, his voice gravel. "She was a journalist. She was asking questions about my business. Su-min found out. I told her to handle it, to scare her off. I meant threats, lawsuits." He looked up, his eyes haunted. The car that killed her was registered to one of Su-min's shell companies. The driver was never found. The room was silent. Anya looked at the photo of the vibrant young woman, then thought of the quiet, watchful boy asleep downstairs. His mother hadn't abandoned him. She had been murdered for trying to protect him from the world his father built, and his aunt had given the order. Min-jun had buried the truth to protect his empire, and in doing so, had left his son in the care of the woman who orchestrated his mother's death. "He can never know," Min-jun pleaded. "Not like this." But the truth was now a live wire in the room. Anya held it. She was no longer just an employee. She was the keeper of the secret that could destroy the Park family. And she had to decide: use this truth as a weapon against Su-min, or bury it to protect Elijah from a pain even she couldn't shield him from. The safe house was no longer safe. The walls were closing in, and the next move would require stepping directly into the darkness Min-jun had created. The confrontation was coming, and it would not be with guns in a street, but with secrets in a boardroom, with a sister who believed she had already won, and with a syndicate waiting in the wings to pick the bones of the loser. Anya Adebio had to become something her training never covered: an avenger. Anya did not give him an answer that night. She walked out of the study and went to the room where Elijah slept. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, the faint frown on his face even in dreams. The secret was no longer a weapon for Min-jun. It was a shield for the boy, and she would decide when, or if, it was ever drawn. The next morning she laid out her terms. She would accompany Min-jun to confront Su-min, but not as his bodyguard, as his witness, and she would control the narrative. They would not go to Su-min's fortified corporate offices. They would summon her to a neutral site, the private clinic in Zurich where their mother lay. A place where violence was unthinkable and where the emotional leverage was at its peak. Min-jun argued, but his position was gone. He had given her the truth, and with it, the power. He agreed. The journey to Switzerland was a covert operation in itself. False manifests for a private jet, layered decoy routes. Elijah left under the protection of Anya's most trusted former colleague at a separate, undisclosed location in Norway. The separation was a fresh wound for the boy, but Anya made him a promise. "This is the last time. When I come back, it ends." He held her hand too tight, then let go. They arrived at the Dolder Clinic at dusk. It was a sanitarium for the ultra-wealthy, all soft lights and silent carpets. Their mother, Park Jae, was in a suite that looked more like a penthouse, attended by 2 round-the-clock nurses. She did not recognize her son. She stared out at the Alps, her world reduced to a window. Min-jun stood by her bed, his shoulders slumped. For a moment, he was just a son, and the empire felt like dust. Su-min arrived an hour later. She came with only one assistant, a severe woman who remained in the hall. She was impeccably dressed, her anger held in check like a concealed blade. "You bring me here to this place to talk," she said, her voice a low hiss. "We could have talked in Seoul." "We tried that," Minjun replied. "You sent men with guns to talk to my son." Sumin's eyes flickered to Anya, who stood silently by the door, assessing, recording every micro-expression with the skills Elijah had mastered. "This is the help, the hired gun who failed." Anya didn't react. She was a statue. The confrontation unfolded not with shouts but with icy, precise accusations. Minjun laid out what he knew: the Macau holding company, the payments to the clinic, the Josian group. Sumin didn't deny it. She leaned back, a smirk playing on her lips. "You think you understand pressure, brother? You sell toys to warlords. I have a $30 million bridge loan due to an entity that skins people alive. They don't want money anymore. They want a share of your pipeline. My hotels are the perfect front. It's business." "It's treason," Minjun spat. "You've invited a wolf into our house." "Your house," Sumin shot back, the calm shattering. "The house our father built. You took the keys and locked me in the garden. I am saving what's left of this family from your arrogance." It was then that Anya spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, cutting through the sibling fury. "You ordered the hit on Choi Hae-jin." The room froze. Sumin's face went blank, then carefully reconstructed itself into confusion. "Who?" "Elijah's mother," Anya said, taking a single step forward. 7 years ago, Gwangju, the car was from your fleet." Sumin laughed, a brittle, terrible sound. "Is this your gambit to accuse me of a tragic accident? How desperate you are." But Anya saw it, the flicker in her eyes, a door slamming shut deep within. Minjun was staring at his sister, seeing her anew. "I have the police report," Minjun said, his voice thick. "The shell company." Sumin waved a dismissive hand. "I have hundreds of shell companies. A car was stolen. A tragedy occurred. This is pathetic." But Anya had one more card, played not from Minjun's file but from her own relentless digging in the hours before they left. "The driver," Anya said. "He was found last year, in a prison in Manila, arrested on unrelated charges. He's been singing to reduce his sentence for months." He named his employer. "The payment came from a subsidiary of your Hong Kong holding group. The testimony is sealed, but it exists, and I have it." It's a bluff. A magnificent, dangerous bluff. Anya had no such testimony, but she had counted on Sumin's paranoia, on the fact that in a world of loose ends she would believe one had finally unraveled. Sumin's composure cracked. Her eyes darted to her assistant beyond the door, then back. The calculation in her mind was visible. If this was true, it wasn't just business rivalry. It was premeditated murder, a life sentence, a scandal that would annihilate her legitimate empire completely. "You have nothing," Sumin whispered, but the fear was real. "Get out." "We're leaving," Minjun said, the upper hand finally his. "But you will call off the Josian group. You will dissolve the debt. You will sign over your remaining shares in the legacy holdings to me. Or the testimony goes to the South Korean prosecutors and Interpol and every news outlet on the planet." It was a brutal terms of surrender. Sumin looked from her brother to the implacable woman beside him. She had underestimated the bodyguard. She had underestimated the bond that had turned hired help into a righteous threat. "I need time," she said, defeated. "You have 48 hours, Minjun replied. They left her standing in their mother's silent room. In the car descending the mountain, Minjun let out a shuddering breath. "You bluffed. That was incredible." "It wasn't entirely a bluff," Anya said, looking out at the passing pines. "The driver does exist. He is in Manila. I just don't have his testimony yet." She had initiated the trace through her own network the moment she heard the name. The gamble was that the truth was findable. Minjun stared at her with a mix of awe and fear. She was operating beyond his control. They returned to the safe house in Norway, to Elijah's relieved embrace. For a day, there was a fragile, hopeful calm. Minjun believed the trap had been set and sprung. Sumin would capitulate. The empire would be secure, if smaller. Elijah would be safe. But on the evening of the second day, the countermove came, and it was not from Sumin. Anya's former colleague, the one guarding Elijah, called her personal satellite phone. His voice was strained. "We have a problem. A courier just arrived. For you, he wouldn't give it to anyone else." The item was a small, fireproof lockbox. No postmark, no return address. It had been left at the gate of their previous Seoul penthouse and forwarded through a series of trusted cutouts. Anya opened it in a secure room. Inside was no bomb, no threat. There was a single, aged photograph and a USB drive. The photograph showed a much younger Min-jun Park in his early 20s, standing with two other men on a dusty airfield. One man was Caucasian, a known mercenary commander since deceased. The other was a North Korean army officer, a man named Choi Yang, identified by a faded annotation on the back. The officer's face bore a striking, unmistakable resemblance to Choi Hae-jin, Elijah's mother. The note on the back in Korean read, "Project Phoenix Initial Partnership." The USB contained a single audio file. The voices were younger but recognizable. Min-jun and the officer, Choi Yang, they were negotiating, not for weapons but for something else, industrial blueprints, chemical formulas. Min-jun's voice was eager, ambitious. "My sister handles the logistics. She can move anything through her ports. Your research division gets the materials, we get a percentage of the pharmaceutical patents." The officer responded, "The party does not share patents. But we will pay a premium. This must be invisible." The recording ended. The implications detonated in Anya's mind. Soo-min's connection to the Joseon Group wasn't a recent debt. It was a legacy. A decades-old, secret partnership between the Park siblings and the North Korean regime, funneling sanctioned materials through Soo-min's shipping lanes under the guise of legitimate trade. Elijah's mother wasn't just a journalist investigating her husband's arms deals. She was the daughter of a North Korean officer, likely defected, who had discovered her own father's corruption and the Park family's complicity. She wasn't killed to silence her about Min-jun's business. She was killed to protect the original sin, the Phoenix Project. Soo-min hadn't just killed her brother's wife. She had killed the daughter of their secret partner. And the Joseon Group wasn't a random syndicate. It was the enforcement arm of that very partnership, sent to collect a debt that was both financial and existential. They weren't just after a share of the empire. They were here to tie up the loose end that was Elijah Park, a child who carried the blood of the officer they betrayed and the woman they murdered. Anya played the audio for Min-jun. He listened, his face draining of all color. He remembered the meeting. He called it a youthful mistake, a one-time deal that went nowhere. He claimed he never knew Choi Yang was Hae-jin's father. He thought she was a defector's daughter with no ties, but the evidence suggested otherwise. It suggested a web so deep that Min-jun himself might be a liar or a fool or both. The lockbox was a message, but not from Soo-min. It was from the Joseon Group. The message was clear. "We have the origin story. We have the proof of your betrayal of our officer. Your sister's debt is just the interest. The principal is the boy. Hand him over and the past stays buried. Resist, and we burn your entire world to the ground." The safe house was compromised. The carefully negotiated surrender with Soo-min was meaningless. She was just another pawn. The real enemy had finally shown its face, and it wanted the one thing Anya was sworn to protect. The conflict was no longer about business or family rivalry. It was about erasing a bloodline to conceal a decades-old conspiracy. Anya Adebyo stood in the center of the storm with a terrified child, a broken arms dealer, and a truth so dark it could start a war. The time for hiding, for bluffing, for deals was over. There is a moment in every protector's life when the manual runs out of pages. The protocols, the drills, the fallback positions, they are maps for a territory that no longer exists. Anya Adebyo stood in that uncharted land. The enemy was not a person but a system, and systems are not fought with fists or guns. They are dismantled with truth. She looked at Min-jun, a man collapsing under the weight of his own history. "They want the boy," she stated, "not to hurt him, to erase him, to close the file on Project Phoenix forever." Min-jun nodded, a broken machine. "What do we do?" For the first time, he was asking her for the plan, not as an employee, but as the only compass he had left. Anya's mind worked with a cold, surgical precision. The Josian group had shown their hand. They had the photo, the audio. They believed they held the ultimate blackmail, but blackmail only works if the victim fears exposure. She turned that logic on its head. "We give them what they want," she said. Minjun's head snapped up, horror in his eyes, but she continued. "We give them the truth, all of it, publicly. We take away their power by removing the secret." It was a nuclear option. It meant destroying Minjun's legacy, exposing Sumin's crimes, and inviting the scrutiny of every intelligence agency on the planet. It meant Elijah would grow up knowing his entire history was a public scandal. But it also meant the Josian group would have nothing left to leverage. A secret everyone knows is just history. Minjun resisted, of course. His life's work, his fortune, his very identity were built on shadows. To step into the light was annihilation. But Anya presented the only alternative, a lifetime on the run, with Elijah as a perpetual target, waiting for the day the syndicate's patience ran out. She then played her final, personal card. She knelt in front of Elijah, who had been listening silently from the doorway, his understanding far beyond his years. "This is your story, too," she said to him, her voice softer than it had ever been. "The truth about your mother, your grandfather, why they hurt you. You can spend your life hiding from it, or you can know it, own it, and let it make you free. But I can't choose for you." The boy looked from Anya to his father. He saw the shame, the fear, the regret. Then he looked back at the woman who had never lied to him, who had taught him to see. He took her hand. "I'm not scared," he said, his small voice steady. "If we tell, then they can't use it to be mean anymore." In that moment, the child articulated the entire strategy. Minjun, witnessing his son's courage, shattered. He agreed. The next 72 hours were a digital blitzkrieg. Minjun, using every remaining ounce of his network's power, did not run. He attacked. He compiled a dossier, the Phoenix Project documents, the financial trails, the audio recording, the photograph, the forensic link of the hit-and-run car to Sumin's company, and the encrypted communications with the Josian group's liaisons. He did not send it to the media. He sent it to 12 different intelligence agencies simultaneously: the South Korean NIS, the American CIA, MI6, Mossad, and others. He made himself the most valuable turncoat in recent memory. The reaction was instantaneous and brutal. Sumin was arrested at Zurich airport trying to flee to a non-extradition country. She was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and based on the new evidence, the murder of Choi Hai-jin. The Josian group, operations in Macau and Southeast Asia, were rolled up in a series of coordinated raids by local authorities acting on the intelligence provided. The syndicate, exposed and crippled, retreated into the shadows, its leverage gone. But the story did not end there. The public narrative, once it broke, was a tsunami. Arms dealer exposes decades-old North Korean partnership, reveals sister as murderer. The headlines wrote themselves. Minjun Park was not portrayed as a hero, but as a penitent. He cooperated fully, providing testimony that led to the disruption of multiple sanction-busting schemes. In exchange for his cooperation, he avoided prison time but faced total financial obliteration. His assets were frozen, then seized. The empire was gone. Through it all, Anya's role evolved one final time. She became Elijah's legal guardian, a status fast-tracked by authorities who saw the bond and understood the boy needed stability away from the toxic Park name. Minjun, in his final act of contrition, consented to it. He would be a part of his son's life, but from a distance, after he had rebuilt himself from zero. The final surprising detail emerged from the wreckage. As intelligence agencies sifted through the Phoenix Project files, they found a buried sub-project. It wasn't just about materials and patents. The North Korean officer, Choi Yang, had been using the Park network to funnel out not just goods but people. Dissident scientists, their families. He had been running a defection pipeline, skimming from the party's projects to fund it. His daughter, Hai-jin, had not just been a journalist digging into her husband. She had been trying to reconnect with her father's hidden legacy, a legacy of quiet rebellion. She was killed not for what she knew, but for what she was about to discover, that her father was a traitor to the regime trying to do good, and that the Parks had been his unwitting benefactors. Her death was ordered by Sumin, but it was the Josian group, acting as the regime's cleaners, who had delivered the trigger. This truth, when it was discreetly shared with Elijah years later, would change the boy's grief from a burden of victimhood into a complex inheritance of sacrifice. The story closes not in a penthouse, but in a small, sunlit house in Wellington, New Zealand. The view is of green hills, not the Han River. Elijah, now 8, attends a local school where his biggest concern is math homework. Anya no longer wears a tactical vest. She runs a small, elite security consultancy, her reputation now mythic in certain circles. Every Tuesday, without fail, she makes jollof rice. The smell fills the kitchen, a thread connecting 2 continents and a fractured past. One Tuesday, the doorbell rings. It is Min Jun. He is thinner, dressed in simple clothes, carrying a small bag. He has no entourage. He has just been cleared to travel after months of debriefings. Elijah runs to him, and this time the hug is not one of desperation but of choice. Father and son sit at the kitchen table, eating the spicy rice, talking about school, about soccer, about nothing of consequence. The weight is gone. Later, Minjun finds Anya in the garden. "Thank you," he says, the words inadequate. "You saved him in every way." Anya looks at the boy kicking a ball against a fence. "We saved each other," Minjun nods. "I start a job next week. Logistics manager for a freight company. Honest work." There is no bitterness in his voice, only relief. As the sun sets, Anya watches the two of them, the father teaching the son how to properly kick a ball. The image of the ambush, the running boy, the shattered glass, it fades, replaced by this quiet evening. The principal had been the child, and in the end the child was safe, known, and loved. Not by a perfect father or a storybook hero, but by a family they had forged in the wreckage of the old one. The last scene is one of peace. Elijah comes inside, his face flushed. He holds up a drawing from school. It shows 3 stick figures, a tall one labeled Dad, a small one labeled Me, and in the middle a figure with dark skin and cornrows labeled Anya. Above them he has written in careful letters, "My family." He pins it to the refrigerator next to a photo of his mother, finally smiling down on the life her son gets to lead. The war is over. The protection detail never ends, but its nature has changed. It is no longer about guarding against bullets, but about guarding the quiet, ordinary peace they had fought a war to win. So what do we make of the moment that started it all? The child running not from danger but toward a specific salvation. In the economy of violence, loyalty is the most volatile currency. It cannot be bought, only earned. And it is earned not in the grand, bloody gestures, but in the silent, daily acts of seeing someone. Anya Adebio was hired to be a shield. She became a sanctuary because she understood the assignment was not a person, but his humanity. The story of Elijah Park is a forensic study in where true power lies. It does not reside in the penthouse, or the offshore account, or the network of shadows. It resides in the quiet trust of a child who, when the world exploded, knew with absolute certainty who his safe harbor was. That trust dismantled an empire. It toppled a syndicate. It rewrote a future, because it exposed the fatal flaw in every corrupt system. They are built on fear and transaction. They cannot comprehend a bond built on consistent, selfless truth. Minjun Park built a kingdom on secrets, and it almost consumed his son. His salvation came not from a bigger weapon, but from a woman who refused to see the boy as an asset. She saw him as a person, and in protecting that person she forced everyone, the father, the aunt, the syndicate, to be seen for what they truly were. The light of that single, fierce loyalty was a disinfectant, burning away the rot of decades. We are left then with a question that transcends this single story. In a world that often feels built on transactional relationships, on what we can get from one another, where do we place our trust? Who sees us not for our utility, but for our inherent worth? The image of a 7-year-old boy running past his birthright, past the guns, and into the arms of the woman who taught him to observe, to be brave, to be loved. That is not just an action beat. It is a manifesto. It declares that family is not always blood. Protection is not always a contract. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act is to simply hold on and refuse to let the world make someone small. The bodyguard did not just save the boy. She saved the father from the monster he was becoming. She saved the memory of a mother from being erased as a mere casualty. She saved the truth itself from being buried. And in the quiet house in New Zealand with the smell of jollof rice in the air, that truth is no longer a weapon or a secret. It is just a story. A story a boy knows about where he came from and who brought him home. The final lesson of the Park saga is this. The most sophisticated security system in the world is no match for a single, unwavering moral compass. Anya's strength was never in her hands, but in her clarity. She knew what was right, and when the moment came, she moved. In the end, that is all any of us can hope to do, to see clearly, and to have the courage to move toward what matters, no matter the cost. Stay observant, stay loyal, and if you found this journey into the shadows worth your time, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the stories that lie just beneath the surface. The world is full of them. Thanks for watching.